So today I decided to go with a fancy theme for our triangle theorems. So take out your composition book and open up to your foldable that has all of your triangle theorems. And let's start with the triangle sum theorem. The triangle sum theorem basically states that the sum of the measures of the angles in a triangle is 180 degrees. What does that mean? That means that the measure of angle A plus the measure of angle B plus the measure of angle C equals 180 degrees. Now let's do an example. Here they want us to find the measure of angle G. Remember that we just learned that the measure of angle H plus the measure of angle F plus the measure of angle G equals 180. So, we plug in the information that we know. We know that the measure of angle H is 35. The measure of angle F is 115. And we don't know the measure of angle G, so we're going to call it X. So we're going to put in plus X equals 180. Now, in order to get X by itself, we can first add 35 plus 115, which will give us 150. Plus X equals 180. Now, to get X by itself, we need to subtract 150 from both sides. So now we have X equals 30. Therefore, the measure of angle G equals 30 degrees. Some of you are saying, well, Ms. Haig, how come we couldn't just add up 115 plus 35 and subtract it from 180? That is what we did in this equation. The purpose of just not knowing that part of it is that you have to learn how to set up an equation to solve these. Because when you are asked a question, it may be represented by an equation versus find the answer. So you have to know both ways. Now let's go to the exterior angle theorem. The measure of an exterior angle of a triangle equals the sum of the measures of the remote interior angles. So this is some new vocabulary, okay? The remote interior angles are angle A and angle B. Those are your remote interior. They are the angles that are not adjacent to your exterior angle. Remember, we learned the other day, exterior means outside, right? This is the angle outside of the triangle. So here, the measure of angle 1 is equal to the measure of angle A plus the measure of angle B. Now let's apply what we just learned. Remember, we said that if this is angle 1 and this is angle A and this is angle B. Remember, we said that the measure of angle 1 is equal to the measure of angle A plus the measure of angle B. What is the measure of angle 1? Well, we know that it is 2x plus 10. It is equal to the measure of angle A, which is x, plus the measure of angle B, which is 65. When we look at this equation on each side, what do you notice? Yes, we have a variable on both sides. That means that we have to get the variable on one side of the equation. We can either move 2x or 1x. I'm going to move 1x. Since that's a positive 1x, we have to subtract 1x. So 2x minus 1x would give us 1x. Now we have x plus 10 equals a positive and a negative cancel out to 0. And that equals 65. Now to get x by itself, we have to subtract 10 from both sides. So now we get that x equals 55. Now, they just wanted us to find the value of x. If they would have wanted us to find the value of angle 1, we would have had to say 2 times 55 plus 10, which when we do 55 times 2, we get 110 plus 10, which would give us 120 degrees. So we could say that the measure of angle 1 is 120 degrees. And since we know that x equals 55, we know that the measure of angle A is 55. If we take 55 plus 65, guess what? It gives us 120. So it's proving our exterior angle theorem that we learned. Alright, let's go on to some other helpful theorems. So the first helpful theorem is that if two angles of one triangle are congruent, guess it helps if I turn on my pen, to two angles of another triangle, then the third angles are congruent. This relates to similar triangles. If you had similar triangles, then it means that angle 1 on one triangle is congruent to angle 1 on the other triangle. Angle 2 on one triangle is congruent to the other angle 2 on the other triangle. Angle 3 on one triangle is congruent to angle 3 on the other triangle. Okay? Then another one is that each angle of an equilateral triangle, remember equilateral triangle means all sides of the triangle are equal, has a measure of 60 degrees. So if you have an equilateral triangle, all of the angles in that triangle measure 60 degrees. Next, in a triangle, there can be at most one right angle or one obtuse angle. And we discussed this last week in my class, that if all of the angles in a triangle equal up to 180, you can't have more than one right angle, otherwise you're not going to have three angles in your triangle. Okay, the same thing applies to an obtuse. You can only have one obtuse angle in order for all of your angles to equal up to 180 degrees. The acute angles of a right triangle are complementary. Now let's remember what complementary means. That means two angles that equal 90 degrees. So, when you have a right triangle, the other two angles will be complementary. It means that they equal up to 90 degrees. That does not mean that they're always going to be 45 and 45. Okay? They can be other measures also. Now let's look at an example. They want us to find the measures of the acute angles of a right triangle ABC if the measure of angle A is x minus 6 and the measure of angle B is 2x. So, if we draw a right triangle, because that's what we're looking at a right triangle. So here I have my right triangle. They say if this is our right angle, then we know that this could be measure A right here, and this would be B, and this would be C. Okay, so they're saying the measure of angle A is x minus 6, the measure of angle B is 2x. We just said that the two acute angles in a right triangle are complementary. Therefore, these two angles are complementary, which means that they add up to equal 90 degrees. So we're taking x minus 6 plus 2x, and if they're complementary, they equal 90 degrees. So now to solve for x, we see on our left-hand side we have some like terms. We have x and 2x. 1x plus 2x gives us 3x. So now we have 3x minus 6 equals 90. Next, in order to get x by itself, we need to add 6 to both sides. So now we have 3x equals 96. And in order to get x by itself, we now have to divide by 3 on both sides. When we divide by 3 on both sides, we get that x equals 32. Okay, so if they wanted us to find the measures of the acute angles, the first thing we're going to have to do is we're going to say on this x minus 6, we're going to say 32 minus 6. Well, 32 minus 6 is 26. So therefore, angle A is 26 degrees. Then in order to find the measure of angle B, we're saying 2 times x, so we're saying 2 times 32. So that means that angle B is equal to 64 degrees. If we add up 64 plus 26, lo and behold, we get 90 degrees. So this is what we're going to be practicing in class tomorrow. So make sure you have your notes and your composition book to refer back to while we're doing our work. Have a good evening.